Hey gang, Professor Feeser here. The purpose of today's lesson is to walk through a serious and sensitive topic using a technical lens, specifically how the open source community is applying AI tools to the vast quantity of data being released in regards to the crimes of Jeffrey Epstein. What most of these projects seek to do is change unstructured data into highly structured data. So, an example of that would be taking a photograph and changing it into text. There's a couple projects at play here. There's two we're going to look at in this video, but many more actually exist. And my goal here is to, one, raise awareness, two, perhaps give researchers, journalists, investigators a pathway forward to helping hold people in account for their crimes. I'm going to speak at a little more length than I normally would regarding the technology involved, and that's just to try to take the magic out of the topics we're talking about. I imagine some folks that watch this aren't going to be my normal technical audience. To get started, we're out here on this website called GitHub. GitHub is free, but you don't have to have an account to use it. You can search through any public projects, even if you don't have an account out here. And it is the de facto place that the open source community puts their work. And the idea behind open source code is effectively the more eyeballs, the more sunlight we get on a project, the more ability that there is for peer review, the more confident we can be in that project, the more confident we can be in the results. So already, if you're a journalist, researcher, investigator, that should raise your confidence level that what we're about to look at can be cited, right? We're going to look at two projects. Like I said, the first one uses ChatGPT. It actually comes with a front end, so something you can search through. The second one is a bit less mature. It's using Gemini. It does not have a front end yet, but what it's doing is the same as the first one, which is ultimately trying to take unstructured data and change it into structured data, specifically JSON. We're going to talk about all this in more detail. Let's go ahead and get started. Gang, the first project we're going to talk about is one using AI, specifically ChatGPT, OpenAI tools, to use optical character recognition, OCR, against all of the Epstein documents that have come out. Turn them into JSON, and then put that JSON into an indexable, searchable database that actually has a website front end. So I want to show that to you now, and we're going to talk about what each one of these things is a little bit as we go along. Right here is a repository. So you get to this by going to github.com/epsteindocs/epsteindocs.github.io. And if you scroll down on that landing page, this is called the README. It's everything they want you to know about this project. So if you read through this, they're effectively going to say, look, we are doing the work, right? We're trying to be as transparent as possible. So everything that we're doing, we're putting the code out there for folks to inspect. You, myself, anybody that wants to come here can come and see how the work was done. You'll notice they have ultimately, here's where we are. This is where our scripting and our results are going to live. There's ultimately a site that maybe for a researcher, journalist, investigator is going to be a lot easier to use than what I'm showing you right now. But let's look at this back end before we go look at that site. Ultimately, most of it says, hey, we wrote a bunch of scripting. That scripting has the ability to build JSON. JSON is the structured data that ends up in a database. And then furthermore, we're going to use AI again against that structured JSON to look for patterns, right? We'll see examples of that when we hop to their website. For right now, let's look at one of their scripts. So everything ending in PY is going to be a script. And I believe like, let's say process images. You can see right up at the top, they're importing a library from AI import OpenAI. So, the brain behind this work is most likely ChatGPT. OpenAI has some other tools as well, but let's just say ChatGPT. That's important because the next project we're going to look at is actually using Gemini to do its work. So we don't have to dig further into the Python scripts here. I'm going to hop back to the root of the repository. That's just where we were a moment ago. The work that's done is placed into a folder called results. And unfortunately, this does not contain, probably because of size constraints, this doesn't contain the source and the resultant JSON. It just is the resultant JSON. So for example, if I click on this, this is the data that was produced from some Department of Justice document, right? If we look at it, I would guess it was some court document, had a date on it, said United States versus Maxwell, United States Courts of Appeal, right? There's document metadata. So the date here, is this when it was ingested? Is it the date on the document? It looks like it's actually the date on the document. Going down a little bit further, they're saying, hey, these are blocks of data that we're seeing on there. If we talk about what this data actually is, this JSON, not that for an investigator or researcher, you need to know this to use this data, but it's important to know ultimately where the data is coming from. Squiggly line in this JSON, which is just a way to structure data. It's like, it's like grammar, right? It's not a vocabulary, but it's how we structure our words so they make sense. A squiggly makes a thing called an object, sometimes called a map, sometimes called a dictionary. But effectively, it means the thing on the left points to the thing on the right. That's it. Sometimes the thing on the left points to another thing on the left, like this. So document metadata points to page number, which is 1. Additionally, document metadata points to document number, which is 1091. Document metadata also points to date, which is 0. You could think of this like a folder, and in that folder is a piece of paper, and on that piece of paper is, a value, and beside it is some dynamic value filled in, right? So if I said, hey, open the folder called document metadata, what's the value of page number? You would say 1. If I said, hey, open text blocks, well, text blocks isn't mapped to a dictionary, it's mapped to an array, sometimes called a list, sometimes called a sequence. In this case, it's not just a single piece of paper that's in the map, that's in the object. It's actually a bunch. So you can see here's one, here's another one, here's another one, here's another one. So in this case, I'd have to say, hey, text blocks, numbering starts at 0. 0 would mean all that. If I said text blocks 1, it would mean all this. If I said text blocks 2, it would mean all this. Furthermore, I could say something like text blocks 0 type, and it would say printed, or text blocks 1 type, and it would say printed again. Not that you need to know JSON to use this, thankfully. But again, I think it's useful to be able to understand when somebody says we're using OCR to ingest unstructured images into very structured searchable JSON, what does that mean, right? So just, picture whether it's an image or whether it's the court document. Now it makes sense, at least to a machine, to a script, to an AI, can now just focus on this and finding patterns or linkages or branches. The way that, and let's go back to the root one more time. Let's hop to, if you scroll down, you will see right here, https Epstein docs github.io. Let's hop to that site and see what they've done with this JSON data set that they've produced from this flurry of real-world data that's been being released. Okay, gang, this is that website. And it's pretty easy to use. You could just search by a key phrase, a word, right on the landing page. Additionally, there's analyses, which are AI labels, subjects that AI has found. Like, hey, there's multiple instances of, say, account application. There's multiple instances of article or profile. So there's a document analyses, there's people. So how many times and what documents do the following people actually appear in this data release so far? Organizations, right? Locations, dates, types, so on and so forth. Again, this website is using the data that we just saw when we looked at that GitHub repository. Okay, gang, the second project we're going to take a look at is doing the same thing. As far as I know, it doesn't have a front end yet, and I'm not sure if one is planned, but the work is very similar. Rather than use ChatGPT, this project is using Gemini, and the project itself is by Christian Harley Cooper. The namespace is Harley Coops. So github.com, Harley Coops, Trump Epstein files. Where the previous project we looked at is using OpenAI ChatGPT to do the OCR. This one is using Gemini, which is Google's. And we can see evidence of that if you scroll down. When you land on a GitHub project, if a README file exists, that's what will be displayed on the main page. So if we scroll down just a little bit, this person describes how it works. Effectively, data, images are organized into a folder structure. This person is running a pipeline, which is effectively uploading images to Gemini. Gemini is turning that into JSON, and then they are writing that back to the repository itself. Couple interesting things. As far as I know, I don't see like a front end, like a searchable database. Maybe there's one planned. Maybe this is just for, the purposes of making a new searchable data set. I'm not certain. If you go into the pipeline folder, this is where I think the most interesting thing, if I was a researcher or someone non-technical, images, you could start in 01. Here is a picture, right? So this looks like a book cover, Shocking True Story of Jeffrey Epstein, Filthy Rich by James Patterson. We go back to that root folder 001. We can see there's a file named the same thing, .json. Photograph, scanned image of a book cover. So AI, OCR, was run against that image. This is the JSON output that Gemini came up with. So, if you were an investigator, if you were a researcher, how would somebody non-technical, probably the best way I could imagine to use this particular project might be to have an academic, have somebody with some code experience, pull all the JSON down and create something searchable, right? Indexable. And that might be going on, like I said, with this project. I don't see evidence of it necessarily right now. It does say that, auto processing and publishing, so going through all the House Oversight, Department of Justice releases, supposedly update frequency every 5 minutes. Now, what I did notice is in pipeline within some of these folders, specifically images, if you look at later on, like some of the higher numbers in the JSON, there are errors coming back, unfortunately. You've exceeded your current quota. Now, my guess is perhaps what this person is doing is using free minutes in order to index this, and ran out of free minutes. I mean, it's a ton of data. I have no idea if there is a plan on their part to, pay to finish the project. I don't see any place where they're trying to solicit, a open source like funds collection. I would tell you if they did. But let's go ahead and look at the owner here, Christian H. Cooper. There's the landing page for their profile. So another project to check out, gang. To recap what we just saw, 2 open source projects on GitHub. GitHub is the de facto place for folks to come place code to get sunlight, eyeballs, more people looking at them. And the theory behind open source is more people looking at a project, the better the result. In this case, both projects are doing the same thing. They're pulling data from the House Oversight, from the DOJ, uploading it to AI toolsets. The first one used OpenAI, the second one using Gemini, to take images, to take PDFs, and turn out highly searchable, highly structured data called JSON. The first project's putting that JSON into a database and running AI across it again in order to get trends, in order to produce folks, subjects that are then searchable by researchers, by, well, you and me, anybody that wants to go out and see that project. I put this together because I'm hoping it builds trust, it builds awareness that these projects are happening, they're available to you. Certainly that first one is made to be used by the public. You don't need a lot of technical prowess to dive right in. I would like to do another video on the redactions or the unredactions that are happening with the PDFs currently. Many of the DOJ documents that were released were redacted incorrectly, and the text is recoverable. I think that's very interesting. We'll look at that next time. So if you want to hear about that, or if you feel like this video helped you get a better grasp on maybe GitHub, open source community, the intersection of real life with code, give me a like, give me a subscribe. I'll see you on the next episode of Code with Feeser.